Hi guys and welcome, Gnembon here. Let's talk today about the birds and the bees and the villagers, demystify some myths, correct some common misconceptions and find a few new interesting quirks with villager breeding. This will be a two-part series. In this video I'll explain a bunch of well-known and less-known aspects of villager breeding mechanics and show a quite easy to do and very practical starter villager breeder. And in the second video I'll show my take on a more industrial villager breeder that could potentially breed in a relatively compact space up to 5,000 villagers per hour. Villagers, in order to breed, need to belong to a village. A village is a collection of doors, or rather door blocks, we'll go back to it in a second, with uneven skylight access in front and behind the door. So the simplest village would be something like that: a door, block, and a villager dude. I'm using here NBT Explorer program to inspect the villagers, how they are formed, where are the doors, and what is the village population to help me show what's going on. Each door allows the village to have 0.35 villagers, so in this case, villager won't breed not only because it doesn't have food, and not only because he is alone and won't breed by itself, but also because it can only be 0 of him in this village. With 3 doors we can have legitimately 1 villager, or 1.05, and with 6 doors 2, so 2.1. To recognize the village, villagers select themselves to detect the doors around them at random every 3.5 to 6 seconds. For that, the game scans a 32 by 32 by 8 area around them for any valid door blocks and adds them or updates them with the existing villages. If a door is not detected for a minute, it's decommissioned from a village, and if there is no doors left in a village, the village is removed. But the door consists of 2 blocks, upper and the lower part. And for villagers it doesn't make too much difference which one of them they detect, as long as it's valid. So in this example we have here, only the bottom part of the door can be a valid village door. The upper part will be just ignored, because it has all the sky access in front and behind the door. But we can manipulate it. With this configuration, for example, both parts of the door can form a valid door, and in this one only the upper block can be a valid village door. It's important to know that when a particular door part is recognized as a valid door, any detection of the other part does not change it, so working with these might be a little bit tricky sometimes if we cannot control which part of the door is recognized first. So for now we'll just focus on this configuration where only the lower part of the door can be a valid door. Once village is formed, the village itself will span at least a 64 block diameter sphere. Any villager within this sphere will feel like it belongs to the village, however only villagers within 4 blocks up and down from the village center would count towards the census. This makes for an interesting case because while it seems that it is the same range as villager door detection area, these ranges are actually offset by 1. Meaning, if we place a villager exactly 4 blocks above the bottom part of the door, which is the only door part we can detect with the setup, the villager will be able to detect the doors, but the doors won't be able to detect the villagers, meaning we can get a stable village of 0 citizens. So since certain things in the village mechanics take significant amount of time, to show a bunch of things, let's speed up the game a little bit and observe what happens when we spawn 2 villagers and give them a bunch of food. So first of all, normally I've seen people recommending using 6 doors to make a fake village, with 1 extra villager just to do the door detection, so with 6 doors this will be 1 short to a village capacity of 2 villagers. With this setup we are pretty much cutting the resources by half. It's 50% improvement. Oh, and this does need to be a diamond block. If we use an emerald block, for example, that should work just fine. And I know, an emerald block is a small price to pay just on saving making 3 extra doors. Also, we don't need an extra villager just to detect doors here, and here entire village party is now responsible for detecting them, which is sweet. Also, we can notice that they are not moving that much, and that's because we are high in the sky and mobs typically pathfind to solid blocks, which we have only 1 of them in the area. And okay, we could technically use this just cobble slab here instead of a diamond block, but I think it looks way fancier with a diamond. The piston here is if we want to be able to turn the breeder on and off, so it's just a sticky piston, the block on top with a bunch of blocks to hold a 3rd villager. So if we spawn a villager here by raising and lowering, we can simply make the number of villagers in the census to reach 1, which will stop the breeding, and then go back to 0 if we raise him. We can also remove or add doors with the same effect, but the census method works immediately, so it has its benefits. One more trick we can show here that involves these doors that can be valid on the upper and lower part as well. In this case, the first villager that detects this door decides whether it's registered at this Y value or this Y value. Mostly they will be seeing the bottom block first as the scanning goes from the bottom up, but if we spawn a villager 5 blocks above the door base, then the upper part of the door will be registered first, and the lower part won't be even seen. And if we spawn a villager 4 blocks above or lower, the bottom part will be registered first. This makes for an interesting ruse. If we spawn a villager higher first, then we will have no breeding, as the village will be centered on the upper block first and then be able to see both villagers as citizens. And if we spawn the lower villager first, then the higher one, the village will be centered around the bottom block, so they will breed as the village will think it now has 0 citizens. And it's all with the same configuration of blocks, we just added villagers in different order. Cool stuff. Couple last things before we go to the simple breeder design. Player reputation and mourning period. If a player kills a villager, its reputation with the village goes down. It can be repaired via trading, but honestly, it's not even worth to be worried about. The only mechanics where it's being used is when a naturally spawned golem wants to decide whether to attack a player or not. And that's not gonna happen with a breeder. It's not enough doors to spawn a golem in the first place. Second mechanic is the mourning period. If a villager dies from a mob like a zombie, or dies from natural causes and a player was within 16 blocks from a dying villager, the entire village stops breeding for 3 minutes. So burning your villagers in lava next to you when you are trying to breed them, just to save on the reputation, is a bad idea. However, apparently killing them yourselves only just lowers your reputation but doesn't impede their breeding, so it's good to know. Okay, so that's all about the boring stuff. Let's look at something fun. A very simple villager breeder you can make that also looks and functions like a regular village. So what I did here, I made a random world, here's the seed for it, and found this village here. The cool thing about it is that it's relatively flat and has many crop plots already built in. Another thing that villagers need for breeding is food. Carrots, potatoes or bread, so you have to either supply them yourself, or if you have a farmer villager, the one with the brown coat, he'll be doing the item collection by himself, providing he has a few crop plots he can harvest. I'll do a more detailed explanation of the feeding mechanics in the next video, but for this one you just need to know to supply them with one type of food, so in this case I made all the plots with carrots. Potatoes would work the same way. With wheat there are some potential issues which are connected with seeds, which are unlikely, but may happen, so carrots or potatoes are the best. The key fact is that I chose the lowest plane of blocks in this village to be at Y64. The Y level doesn't matter as long as you select one, and so I patched all the holes here around the village below it and replaced all the path made of path blocks at this level with more solid gravel paths. The only reason is I don't want any villager to stay below Y64, and path blocks as well as farmland blocks put you down a little bit. Okay, then I adjusted the crop plots so wherever you stand here, your feet are at Y64 or a bit higher, but less than Y65. Which would make that wherever the villager stands in this area, they can only check for up to a particular Y value below the ground for village doors. Again, the choice of the Y value here doesn't matter as long as you are consistent. So the center of the village will be below this trapdoor here, so I tried to make most of the area within a door detection area, so 32 blocks across at this Y64 level. So to achieve that, I lowered this library a little bit by 1 block, as well as the blacksmith, which I also outfitted with a proper anvil. It's about time for that, don't you think? I secured the well a little bit more so they can't fall into it, and made sure that the existing doors in the village don't count. So if you look at this one for example, it looks like a proper village door, but it's actually placed sideways. So normally you would place the door this way, so then the front of the door has much more daylight access than the inside, the back, for obvious reasons, and then it counts as a valid village door. But you can place the door this way, so then this is the front and this is the back, and both sides have even skylight access, so 2 blocks here and 2 blocks are blocked over here. So this won't count as a valid door. And we can even close it by opening it, and the F3 screen will tell us that this door is actually opened while it's actually closed. And it's also a very good way to prevent zombies from breaking wooden doors, because they won't break doors that are actually technically open. I did the same with all doors in the village, like this one in the library. It's a little tricky one because one side has all sky access blocked. This means I needed to block fully the sky access on the other side of the door, and for both parts of the door as well. So that's why we needed this pile of rubble here. This is another special case where, because of the crop plot, we have only one block with sky access on this side of the door, for the bottom part of the door, so I needed to block the same way on the other side. That's why we have these slabs here, so only one block has sky access on the other side as well. The top part of the door has no problem, it's all symmetrical. In this case we have two blocks blocked in both front and the back. And that's it. At this point this village would have no valid doors despite having a few doors and a few houses, and we can verify that with NBT there is no village formed. In order to make our infinitely breeding village, what we just need to do is to dig down 5 blocks in the center of the village and place at least 3 doors so they can see the light shining through this hole we just dug. I just placed here 4 doors just for the symmetry reasons, but 3 is fine. Now we are 5 blocks down, not 4 as I mentioned at the beginning, because this is this weird situation where both top and the bottom part of the block doors can make a valid village door, because both have uneven access to daylight. So, by dropping them 1 block lower, we can only allow villagers to recognize the top parts of the doors only, which makes sure that we always get the village where we want it to appear. So in this case, any villager on our platform at Y64, which is our village level, would be able to recognize the top part of the door only, and that's our breeder complete. At this point we need to bring here just 2 villagers. They can be one of the original members of the previous village, or we can just cure 2 zombie villagers for that. If one of them is a farmer, you are all set, otherwise you have to provide them with some starting food. Hopefully they will make a farmer at some point and you should be done. We can always verify if all we did is correct by checking the NBT data of the village. We should have only the upper blocks of the doors underground recognized, as well as the population size, despite them being around here, should indicate 0. So for demonstration I have here mob spawning disabled and killed all the entities around us, so we can speed up the game considerably. And within a couple of Minecraft days we can notice that they will start and then continue breeding like crazy, and as I said, you can just simply come back here periodically, kill off the ones that you don't want, siphon out some good book dealers, and beware that they will be breeding infinitely, so you have to keep an eye on them and you should be fine. In case you want to stop them breeding, just remove the doors. Blocking the sky access for them would work just fine, but for that you need to unload the village completely, since the doors will not check again for the sky access once they are added. Another way of stopping is to make some of the fake doors on the surface valid again, which will move the village center upwards, which would mean that suddenly most of the villagers on the surface would count toward the part of the census. This is also safe to do because village sieges apply to villages with more than 10 doors, and we have here just added the 5th one. So that was my introduction to villager breeding with a few breeding quirks that allow to start infinitely breeding them with just 3 doors and 2 villagers using the 0 size village technique. As I mentioned at the beginning, in the second video I will be talking more about the industrial breeders, where you are at full control over who breeds with whom, when and how fast, as well as I'll introduce some weird and lesser known secret village mechanics, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a like. If you have anything to add, leave me a comment in the comment section below. Subscribe if you're new, click this dang bell next to the subscribe button if you want to be notified about the future content, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!